conservative in Maine, right? All right. I can't think of a better way to spend Flag Day than here getting to know Dean Scontras, a leader who is the next congressman in Washington from the Great Maine, will make sure that we're able to continue celebrating Flag Days and the freedoms that that flag stands for today. Again, my name is Jeannie Wolkens, and I'm a very proud mom from the town of Topsom. I have two incredible sons who are the joy of my life. Jacob, my oldest, who's here today, he is my conservative, level-headed, history buff of a 19-year-old son. And I also have a 7-year-old Spitfire. He's not here today, you can tell because it's quiet. He's commonly called the little goofball. But I got to tell you, these two guys are a huge part of the reason that I'm supporting Dean Scontras for Congress. Let me start at the beginning. I've always been fairly politically minded. I remember as a child growing up and learning about the different parties and presidents and what they thought and stood for and what they mean. In 1988, I was proud to cast my first presidential vote for George H.W. Bush. But now let's fast forward to 2001. My passion for politics really intensified in the year 2001, like it did for a lot of Americans. In 2004, I considered myself a security mom. You remember security moms, right? They used to be called soccer moms, but now they had bigger things to worry about than whether or not the kids were going to win the next game. Now they were concerned for safety and security of their children. Well, now in the year 2010, I think of security moms again. But in the year 2010, security mom, the definition's really changed. It's grown for me. Now I'm not just worried about the current administration's ability to keep my children and my future grandchildren safe from man-made disasters, or, as I call it, terrorism. But I'm also concerned with, are they going to protect the financial security of my children? I'm worried about them having freedom from insurmountable debts and deficits, freedom from government-owned and controlled health care. I'm worried about them having a government that is so big that it crushes their ability to thrive in a private sector job. And I'm worried about a government that tells my kids when they've made enough money. I guess you can say I've grown from security mom to freedom mom. Government big enough to supply everything you need is also big enough to take everything you have. The course of history shows that as government grows, liberty decreases. And those words are just as true today as when Thomas Jefferson first said them. I'm scared for my sons and my future grandchildren that may indeed be their future if we don't reel in this progressive machine that's going on down in Washington, D.C. right now. At the ripe old age of 19, my son's already been affected by this. Let me share with you how. After high school, for many reasons, Jacob decided to take a year off. Well, in the spring, Jacob needed to start thinking about applying for student loans. Time was growing close. Well, guess what happened in March? The government took him over by putting it in the health care bill. Well, I'm pained to say this, Jacob has now decided that he's not going to further his education until he can afford to pay for it as he goes, because he refuses to let government control that part of his life.
Yeah, buddy.
You see, Jacob, or JC as he goes by with a lot of the family, is smart enough to realize that if government is controlling the payment to the schools, it's not too long before they're able to control what he is and is not allowed to study, as they then can control the curriculum. I believe the only way that we can maintain a secure and free future for all of our children and grandchildren is to send more men and women who share the conservative beliefs of people like Dean Scontras to our Congress. Dean Scontras understands that children being born today are already in debt to the government by over $40,000. That's more than most Mainers make in a year. He knows the USA will go financially the way of Greece and Europe if we don't lower taxes, stop out-of-control bailouts and government spending. Dean Scontras also knows that the only way to keep a thriving private sector going is to limit regulations and crazy taxes that make it so much harder to keep good Americans employed. He also knows that unless we fix the economic state of our country, more and more companies will be forced to move to countries that have lower government intrusion and a much more inviting tax climate. Dean runs an alternative energy company. He also understands that part of our security means getting off of our awful dependence on oil from countries that don't even like us. And most importantly, I think, as a father, Dean Scontras knows the importance of providing all of these securities and freedoms for our kids. I hope that you'll stand with me in supporting Dean Scontras. If we want to ensure freedom and security for our kids, we have to stop this progressive Pelosi machine that is running rampant down there by sending Shelley Pingree packing and Dean Scontras to the Congress halls. I can tell you that when Dean Scontras takes the oath to protect and defend the Constitution in the year 2011, we can be sure that when our grandkids come to us and sit on our laps and say, Graham, tell me about when you were little, we never have to say, once upon a time, America was a free country. Join me, let's get together as freedom moms and freedom dads, and let's get Washington back on track, and Dean Scontras to Washington, D.C. And now it's with great pride and honor, I am very happy to welcome the next congressman from the 1st District of the great state of Maine,